strong as a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm Chamberlain Bauder, thanks to my producer Paul Russo. Today in studio we have the head coach of the three-peat Division III men's ice hockey national champions of the Hobart Statesmen, Mark Taylor, in studio with us. Coach, how's it been, I guess, these first couple of weeks after joining really royalty in the Division III hockey world?
It's been great. Certainly had some invites to go down to the Sabres game, and it's been great. Been busy. Good busy though.
Good busy, yeah. I mean, this team, you look at the way that it tracks through the end of the season, and obviously for us broadcasting, we get the full real March Madness is the fact that all of the spring sports are going on, and then all of your winter sports still have to play through the end of the year. You guys, I mean, if nobody felt like was questioning whether or not this team was going to make it to that weekend. It was just a question of how you guys were going to do it. It felt like a lot of the times. I mean, you go 27-1-1. I don't really know what you can necessarily ask for more out of that kind of a regular season situation. But so we'll take a couple steps back from, of course, that weekend, and we'll get into that momentarily. But let's talk a little bit about this season. This was probably the first year that after those national championships, your team really started to change more so. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if
change with players graduating, transferring to Division I programs and things like that.
Yes, we had a big change, and certainly early on, before the season started, there was a lot of people that we're in the conversation, but nobody really thought we would be there in the end. They were picking other teams to be there in the end, and that was good for me. I used a book that I picked up this summer, Operational Excellence, about the nuclear sub culture, and we embraced a lot of the messaging of that book this year. Basically, keep ourselves under the radar, and somebody'd say, "Well, you're just two-time defending national champs. How do you stay under the radar?"
Yeah.
I think in all fairness to people that felt, geez, we're a good team, but to do it 3 times is going to be tough. They're right. It is tough. And we were excited. I tried to dodge every media request I could during the year because I wanted to keep us under the radar.
Right.
And it really helped us stay cemented in our mission, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like the nuclear sub kind of mentality is also that you have to stay even keeled, don't get too high, don't get too low because of that type of environment that you're in. I feel like that speaks to the hockey world very well and just kind of a way to play. Would you agree?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's there's a one of the pillars of that culture is real questioning attitude amongst each other and within that organization, but also it's called watch team backup, where you're always backing each other up and you're always watching out for each other and in a good and a corrective way. And I thought we did a real good job of that. I thought the guys really bought into keeping everybody honest and keeping everybody focused and everybody kind of pointing in the same direction all year long.
Yeah, no, it was awesome to watch this season. My first game that I broadcast was 6-0 routing of Potsdam, and that was just an interesting moment for me as someone that's been at Brockport, where they play Potsdam. Yes, they beat Potsdam normally, but they don't ever do it like that, and they don't ever post the shutout. And just seeing that next level, and then we keep going through each game, and you guys host Elmira, and they're 11th in the country when they get there, and you beat them 6-1 on a Friday, and it's just like, oh, and then the same goalie is going to come into the net tomorrow because they don't want to try to put their backup in against you. Like, I just looked through this schedule that you guys played, and I remember I was on air before the game started on Sunday, and I had said, not that this was a Mickey Mouse schedule in any way. You had plenty of nationally ranked programs, but except for that game against Albertus Magnus, and I'd probably say the couple of games against Skidmore in there, it didn't feel like you guys maybe had the full competition in every game that you were in. You were doubling up so many teams in shots, winning over 60% of the face-offs, just really dominating, and not just with one or two lines. But then, of course, that leads also to the fact that this team forces other teams to only roll their top two lines, and you guys don't care who's out there. And by the third period, it's just a completely different hockey game. But so I guess the question to you is, when, of course, you're the one setting up the schedule, and it's obviously the last year of the conference of the NEHC, just what was that non-conference schedule setting up like?
The same as every other year. I mean, going into the year before the puck was dropped for the first game, if somebody would have looked at our schedule and said, geez, you got Babson twice, Skidmore twice, Norwich twice, Salve twice, they wouldn't be, they would think that's a very competitive schedule.
Right.
And, unfortunately, at times when we were looking at the MPI ranking, it was, us beating everybody in our league was starting to hurt us because, everybody's got 2 losses against Hobart.
Mm-hmm.
Skidmore was the only team that put three goals up on us twice.
Yep.
They're a really good hockey team. They had, All-American defensemen. They had All-American forwards. They're a really good hockey team. I don't think they had the goaltending. But, that was a team that I worried about as much as anybody this year.
Mm-hmm.
But they're unranked because of maybe what they didn't do. Babson was a good team. Jamie Wright's a great coach for them. He's been around forever. That 0-0 hockey game was a great hockey game. They beat Trinity, and Trinity's ranked. In Norwich is always Norwich. I mean, they're a good program. I think, I didn't, we let the people talk about our schedule a little bit because we knew.
Mm-hmm.
We might have been, like when we played Elmira, we played spotless.
Mm-hmm.
And we played Norwich, we played spotless. And
Yep.
a lot of the games this year, we played really good hockey, and that credit goes to my leadership group. I mean, Luca Quero and then, Cooper Swift. I mean, Swifty puts down aces every game, and he does it right under the radar. And again, going back to that book, Dr. Mark, our team doctor, is a Navy guy. And when I talked to him about the book, and he says, everybody, when you talk about the hot shots of the Navy, everybody thinks of Top Gun and what you see on TV. And he said, but those guys respect the sub guys. Mm-hmm. And the culture of the sub world is they want to stay under the radar. They don't want any press. They don't want any. They don't want to draw any attention to themselves. That's not how they're going to operate at their best.
Yeah.
And that's what. We did. We stay really focused on, how we played. And even though, we might have doubled numbers up on some teams, we played really good hockey. It wasn't, sometimes, and it showed at the end.
Right.
I mean, why we were playing the same way through 60-plus minutes against Utica, the best thing about coming back and being ranked number 1 all year was we got a top team's best game, and we got a bottom team's best game. Mm-hmm. We were a game for a team to say, hey, we can knock off an undefeated, team in the country. I mean, Albertus Magnus, I mean, we doubled up the shots against them. Their goalie played phenomenal.
Right.
Hats off to them. I mean, it's a new program. He's a good coach. They had good players. I mean, they got guys that, from Alberta and Saskatchewan, not that you have to be from Canada, but some from some very good leagues that were captains of their teams.
Right.
And they played great hockey. So I think that was one thing that really made us good at the end, was every single game, even though the score might have looked different, we knew how that game went and how we had to play. There might have only been 1 or 2 games, I couldn't even tell you which ones, where I walked out, we won, and I walked away going, I didn't like the way we played. It really wasn't,
Right.
And that's really important, because if you do something a lot of times at a good level, when you start getting fatigued and pressure starts setting in and all those challenges start setting in, your habit of performing at the top of your game a lot of times makes it easy to perform at the top of your game at that one critical time.
Right. Yeah, it's muscle memory at that point for them.
Yeah, and we've been there. And that's, I remember Luke coming to the bench after Utica scored, and he was like, boys, we've been here before.
Yeah.
We were just here last weekend.
Literally, yeah.
You know,
Yep.
just do what we do and stay the course. And, I think that was us all year.
Yeah.
Stay
the course definitely feels like it. Yeah. Because, it was crazy just to watch, rankings as you're going through the season and you're like, oh, who's going to be right behind Hobart this week? It's just because it was just one of those things where it's like, well, why would they be moved from number one if nobody's going to decrown them as in a game this season? And so it kind of plays out that way. But two games that I want to talk specifically about from this regular season that Skidmore won first.
Yeah.
So I was calling a Hobart basketball game when that game was going on, and it's me and Ted Baker, and Ted is actively pulling up the live stream or the live stats of the game, and he's like, whoa, they're down 3-1 right now. And I was like, oh, what? They're down 3-1? And he was like, yeah, in the third. I said, in the third? And he goes, with 15 minutes left. And I said, oh, they're fine. It's just, that's how we as the people that have covered this team can process, there's way too much time on the clock for Hobart to work with right now. And that's even how it felt when we got down to the national championship. So you talk about those moments, I think about that third period being a moment of, Skidmore, you pissed us off. Here's what we look like when we really realize maybe we didn't have things fully turned on and we can just flip these couple of switches or move this gear into the right spot and then it turns like that. Just how did that third period kind of evolve that way in Skidmore?
I think it was, we were getting challenged on, some bounces. I mean, it is a game of bounces sometimes. Right. And, I just think you got down to that point in the third where we're like, we gotta find a way or we gotta make a way and get this done. And, it was, again, another point for us being challenged differently in terms of, doing a lot of the right things, but not getting the right results. And you're also, playing a team that one or two mistakes and, they can get it done.
Right.
And it's in their rink. So there's some realities to that, but I think in the end it was us having, those guys having a belief in each other and knowing that they're going to find a way. It's a comment that I say to guys, to me, I've never been disappointed with a team that gives me their full effort and they go about it the right way. Mm-hmm. A loss to me is when you don't show up, and as I've told them, a fighter really never loses, he might run out of time. And, that was something that, I think the guys embraced was, hey, we don't want to run out of time, and just keep fighting. And I'm a believer of that. And, you definitely steal from other coaches, and John Wooden's one of the best, and he has so much great material out there for coaches, young coaches, old coaches. I mean, just his quotes and his beliefs and, is having that, for me, it's always having that self-satisfaction that, guys have been the best they're capable of being. And, there's games I remember, not this season, the season before we lost at Babson. We outshot them 2-1. We had chances. We hit posts. The guys played awesome. And I remember seeing some of my alums after the game, and they just said, hey, it's just one of those games. And I told the guys, you know what? There's no reason to have a conversation. You played great. You should have won. You didn't win. And it was funny because one of their players on Babson, his dad, the player's dad was just taken to hospice, and, so maybe the hockey gods said, hey, that team needs a W more than you guys need a W today. Right. So that's about the only justification I could give, and it's a good justification. Yeah. And so for me, it's, playing at that level.
Yeah.
And so I think we've been there long enough, but I think the guys really, they know I've got their back. They give me their best effort. That's all I ask.
Yeah. That you already brought up the goaltending really being the thing in that Albertus Magnus game, but I'm more intrigued what the vibe of everyone was when that game ended this season. Was it one of those moments where the team kind of just felt like they ran out of time?
Yeah, I think I'll be honest with you. I think there was some, I don't think it was that. I think, and that's my fault. I think we lost, we deviated focus a little bit. I think at that point of the year, there's a lot of hype about the win streak. There's a lot of unbeaten streak and all that stuff. I think we went into that game just to win the hockey game and not play with the passion of playing hockey. And, they were undefeated in their home rink. I thought it was teed up pretty good for them in the sense that they have never lost at home that year, the whole year. They had beaten some teams. They had just beaten BAPS, and they showed that they could beat some good teams.
Right.
It's a different rink. It's the first time we've ever been there. I tried to do some things to make sure we were aligned right.
Yeah.
I don't think we were. I don't think that was that wasn't our best effort. It wasn't the correct focused effort in that game. The intentions were right, but sometimes showing up playing to win is different than showing up determined to win.
Right.
And also you gotta show up and be excited about that game. And so I thought that was I'll take that because it was a good lesson for us, good challenge for us. And as I told the guys, hey, good for them. I'm glad it was. I'm glad in the end it was a up and coming program, and because I was there 20 years ago with Hobart, where we knocked off RIT, who was the perennial king of the level.
Yep.
And I know what that felt like. So for that group of kids, I mean, they just knocked off the number one team. That was the biggest win in program history for them, and they earned it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like they earned it. Good for them. If we had to be the ones that
Right.
that we were the ones.
Yeah.
So I think our guys took it that right way too. Of good for them. Shame on us.
The next one. We'll get them tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That was it was an interesting, because when I looked, I was getting ready to do the next home weekend. I think I was doing first round of NEHC playoffs, and I'm like, wait, they lost? I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, you know what? It had to happen eventually, because if it didn't happen in the regular season, it would have hurt way worse if it happened in the semifinals or in the quarterfinals of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, at least you got to experience it before you get to that. And, I love the way that you just talk about the other team in that situation. That's just such an interesting perspective.
Yeah, for me, it's, good for them.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't like we played we played terrible, or I dressed a depleted lineup or anything like that.
Yeah.
They played great. Their goalie played phenomenal. I mean, he played phenomenal in the playoffs too against us.
Yep.
And our wasn't embarrassing on our side either.
Right.
It wasn't like I was, dejected by guys or anything like that. But, if somebody can play to their their extreme best, and you just play solid, that might not be enough.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's talk about the weekend, the Frozen Four, the New York Invitational, as I was calling it on air. It held true to the name. The championship ends up going through New York. Everything has to run through, you guys now. But so when you get into that tournament, when you hear who the four teams are, you go, oh, look, two guys who are conference opponents. They've played. They had played 5 times in the regular season and playoffs to that point, and fully split. It was like a 2. They were, one of them was 2 and 3, the other was 3 and 2 in that time. So, and then you get, of course, Curry on the other end of that, which it felt like this year was in the shadow conversations of, is Curry better than Hobart? Was what everyone wanted to know, it felt like, at different times. And for me, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, so we're going to find out, won't we? And instead, Cinderella does her thing, and you get Utica at their home rink, which, again, you have to go through a host in the championship. So let's start with Friday.
Yeah.
Obviously, both the same scoreline, 2-1 games. Just that game first felt a lot slower after the opening 5 minutes. It definitely, when I was watching it, it felt like those opening 5, you guys came out and you swung for the fences, so to speak. And then after that, they just kind of settled into their game a little bit more, and it slowed way down versus, a 2-1 hockey game for you guys versus watching a 6-2 game against Norwich earlier in the year. So just, how did that game play out, and how was it kind of with the guys getting to that spot? Obviously, they've been there before, but you also have 6 first years that are all on that lineup too.
Yeah, I think that's it. Again, I go back to it as, like some people say, geez, you want the target on your, the comment is, you got the bullseye on your back.
Right.
And I disagree. You got the bullseye right on your chest.
Yeah, maybe on your forehead even.
So that helps you. If you embrace that, that helps you. And for me, excuse me, I've always embraced being ranked high. I mean, because you want. I mean, I think it makes it easy to say to you guys, look, we gotta put down aces, because somebody coming into this rink, this is what they think they're playing, and if we don't play to that level, they're going to be up to that level, and then we're going to be in trouble. So, again, I just think it helped us come out the way we come out. We have some visuals, and we do some stuff with some movies, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Warrior, and one of the actors and one of the stars of that movie, he comes out into his, it's about a martial arts brothers.
Oh, okay, got it.
And one guy comes out a certain way, kind of like we come out in the first period.
Yep.
And, we always talk about that's the way we want to come out. And I think we do a good job of that. So we put people back on their heels. We set the pace because we know we're going to keep that pace. And some teams can adjust to that, some teams can't. I thought, Geneseo, I had coached one of those kids at the World University Games. I know how good they are. I mean, we've recruited a lot of the same players. Right. They get some, we get some.
Yep.
So I know how good they are, and I just felt, we had to set the tone of the pace. And then, in those games too, you know how defensively good you have to be. So that can change a game, in terms of maybe looking slower, or it's maybe not slower, just tighter.
Right.
And we knew we needed to be that way with them because, they have some high talented players. They have some fast players. We definitely wanted to slow them down. So that we didn't try and play a slower game. We tried to play a tighter game so they couldn't get wound up.
Right. Okay. Yep.
So I felt we matched up pretty good with them in terms of how we play.
Yeah.
We can play fast, but we can play abrasive.
Yep.
And tight.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so
that would help us.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was talking to the assistant SID for Geneseo before the game, and we're having a friendly argument about whether or not either Matthew or Chris is faster than Peter Morgan. And then I was like, oh, we don't actually get to find out because none of them have actually done a full sprint yet in this game because it's, like you said, it's tight and compacted except for Morgan's breakaway. That was really the only time any of the fast players in that game actually got to show off their speed, it felt like. So then later that night, I'm assuming you guys ended up watching the game in some capacity between Curry and Utica, and Utica comes out with a new defense from the sounds of it that had not been on tape yet. A lot more blocks, a lot more, really just felt like we're near the end and we have a freshman goalie. Let's make sure we're all giving him as much help as possible.
Yeah.
So was there any sort of a strategy change going into that one for the championship, or good teams do focus on themselves and change internally when they need to change, but
we've that's not a it wasn't really for us because we've seen that with some teams.
Right.
Some teams in our league that have played that way where they really collapse in their D zone block shots and try and get chances off those block shots. So that was something that we had seen before. So that wasn't you had to change. We had you tweak how you're going to play, but not much. I mean, we knew that was going to be, a challenge to get to their net and get pucks through, and we've seen that before.
Yeah.
So it's not the funnest to play against, but you know, you play against it.
Right. When you go through a game like that, where, I mean, you guys normally are doubling your opponents in shots on goal in a game, and you guys were doubling Utica in shots, but you were getting beat through the first 2 periods on shots on goal because it was like they literally had like 15 blocks, I felt like, by the end of 40 minutes. So when you're going through a game like that and you are used to being able to control a game, control everything about it, and then someone looks up at the scoreboard and sees that you guys don't have the shot lead, like, even close at a given point, does it throw anybody off, or is it just like, no, we know that the shots are there, they're just not going where they need to go right now?
You know, it's you know, in boxing terms, you're landing punches, and you just keep hitting.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you too. I mean, I'm aware of shot clocks. You know, they're not perfect. You know.
Oh yeah.
And so you know, you see a shot get through, and you take a quick glance at the shot clock, and it doesn't move.
Doesn't change. Yep.
Like, okay. And you know, I've got guys working on staff with me of, you know, what are the shots that you guys have?
Yep.
What are the shots that are showing on the board? You know, and then they bring down a sheet, you know, in between periods. And sometimes there's 3 different figures.
Yep.
And no different than face-offs.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
You know, Luke might be losing face-offs in the neutral zone or the offensive zone, but he's not losing them in the defensive zone.
Yeah.
All right. You know, I'm not getting too rattled with that.
Right.
You know, I remember Mario Lemieux used to let guys win face-offs where it wasn't critical, so that he was in a better position to win a face-off when it was critical.
Right. So that you could get the jump on him, kind of thing. Yeah.
You know, so you know, figuring, you know, because you're going against the other guy, they got to figure out how he's playing things. So, so statistically for me, you know, it's you know, I learned a number of years ago. It's I really focus a lot more on the spirit of my team. Like, that's what I'm constantly watching, reading the bench, seeing guys. You know, you can tell a lot from a kid's face. You know, Khalil Fontana, when he came after, you know, when he had a chance and he tried to pass it to Iggy Beloff, and they fouled it, and you know, his response to me when he came to the bench, not the response to me, but his what he said to me and his expression on his face was priceless. And you know, so I focus more on that. And if I'm feeling things are going good, and even though we're not getting the results, it's all, you know, as long as the game's a long enough game,
right?
And you know, one of those pucks get through. Like, sometimes, you know, I'd see a shot and maybe it got deflected or half blocked, and I'm thinking, geez, that gets through. That's right in the net. You know, okay, just keep doing what we're doing, and make some tweaks.
Yep.
Like, you know, when teams pack in like that, sometimes, you know, and it favors us because, you know, we'll just, our D will fire it wide.
Yep.
And they'll bring the puck back out to the, you know, the slot area, and you know, that's tough for goaltenders, you know, to make that save when it comes off the back wall. And then I just saw one last night, 2 nights ago in the NHL like that, where it came off the back wall and the guy just sifts it right in.
Lose the puck into the slot.
You know, it's so for me, you know, that doesn't go up on the shot clock.
Right.
But it's a loose puck in the slot, which would be the exact result of a save.
Yep. Right.
So
True.
To me, statistically, it doesn't go up on the board, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, you get that is where the goal in the third really comes from, is everyone's packed in tight, and Bauer just goes, all right, I guess I'm just going to hit this thing really hard, just send it in and see what happens. And that felt like it was, I mean, Easton was exactly where he needed to be to finish that one. But to also go on what you were saying with the energy of your team and that, this game, it felt like in about the last 10 minutes of that third, you guys hadn't been winning faceoffs to that point. The shots, like we talked about already, and then all of a sudden it was face-off win, face-off win, face-off win. No matter where they were, whoever it was, fourth line, first line, third line, and it was like the clutch moment of like, oh, it's that time. Like this, it's now or never kind of a situation. Really started to feel like it kicked in, and they just like turned the corner on that whole game.
I think that, and I also think, you know, that's the way we practice. I mean, I'm a big believer of, you know, practice tougher in games, so games are easy. You know, so I do think with some teams, you know, can they play the way we play for 60?
Right.
A lot of teams can't.
Right. No.
And, So I don't know, I don't know what they were feeling. I don't know if at, 50-minute mark, I think there was a time where at least I felt it. I
Yeah.
thought we had them on the ropes.
Yeah.
I thought I was watching them come to the bench. I thought their guys looked fatigued.
Yeah, definitely.
And they were only playing 5 defensemen, and we're a tough team to play.
Yep.
If you only have 5 guys rolling back there.
Yep.
And so I felt they were starting to get fatigued. To us, I don't think we were playing with urgency but not pressure.
Mm.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
Guys had my wind to their back. So I think we were playing with urgency but not pressure, and we've been there
Right.
more.
Right.
And there's no question that favors a team.
Yeah.
If you keep it where where it's supposed to be. If you think that gives you, if you think that's going to give you an edge, you're not going to have the edge.
Right. But if you can use that for
If that gives you a bonus edge,
Yeah.
then you're going to have an edge.
Right.
And I thought maybe they're getting nervous. They certainly were getting fatigued. So I think that's when all of a sudden things started tipping our way.
Yeah. Well, and I mean the bodies were flying from the opening minute of that game. I mean that got crazy, absolutely wild.
Even for a coach, I mean that game went real fast.
Yeah. And a couple sticks getting chucked out of the rink as it went too. That was fun times there. But so we get into OT, and one of the last things I want to ask you about. So Callum Chow starts with Cooper Swift on defense in that overtime period. Just talk me through that decision. Was it really just you didn't want to put Maurer and Swift together?
No, it was just Maurer was nursing something.
All
So
right. That's what I thought. I was going to say he
mean,
went out a little bit in the third, didn't he?
Yeah. So that that was the reality to it. But we still had 6D playing great hockey, and our freshman D was so. They did an awesome job this year. We like you said, we turned over a lot of players. We turned over, Artem Buzavera, who ended up going and playing at Bentley and being a key player for them, and Hartsey, who went to Brown University as a sophomore transfer. So we lost a lot of guys. My concern was the decor that we lost, just because that's been a staple of our program, is having not just good goaltenders but good defensemen.
Right.
And I just believe that, if your goalies are good and your decor is good, your forwards are just going to be better. And those 4 freshmen D, not one of them were recognized by the league, and rightfully so, because, they split a lot of game time.
Right.
But as I said to them, I mean, you guys filled a hole of a group 4 other D that won 2 championships here.
Yeah.
You should take a ton of pride in that.
Yep.
And we were playing 3 freshmen D.
Yeah.
Overtime with 3 returners.
Yep.
So those guys did an awesome job as players, but also as selfless teammates. And because Chow won a championship in junior hockey the year before, so he's been a primetime minute guy. Elliott was in the BCHL. Yeah, Doolin was in the North American League. D'Amatis had played in Utica, so for him, he was the one that was on home ice.
Right.
So those guys are all primetime players for their junior program.
Yeah.
And, they had to, share minutes throughout the year. And they did an awesome job of that.
Yeah.
They did an awesome job of that. For, our toughest job was which defenseman we weren't going to play on a given game.
Right.
Our decor, there wasn't one game that we went into this year where we're like, who we going to play?
Yeah.
It was like, who are we not going to play?
Yeah.
And that's a great place to be.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah,
ultimately.
great problem to have, but it's not a problem when you got the right type of guys that are
Mindsets.
committed to the big picture.
Yeah.
And you might not have those. I'll say you might not have those minutes during the year, but man, you might have a moment at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and that's the big difference.
Yep. Let's talk about that moment, and then my last question will be about the goalies here. But so in that moment, obviously, 18. There was 1:34 left on the game clock as Khalil comes around the goal, and that puck just bounced right back across the goal line, and it was essentially in just the perfect spot. And what else for Hobart to win the national championship than on a forecheck and just on loose, chaotic, pressured play that turns into a chance right in front of the net. How did you see it from way closer than I was down there on the bench?
Well, I definitely give you the backstory to that. So, as I mentioned, Khalil came to the bench after earlier in the game, a chance to score, and he tried to pass it off. He's an unselfish player, tried to set up Beloff, and it miscued, and they didn't get it done. And he came to the bench and with such a conviction, just screamed, scream's probably the wrong word, but said it very forcefully that he was going to score next time. And I said to him as he, kind of gathered himself, as like, hey, it's an unselfish play. That'll come back to you. And I'm a big believer of that. Like, you make unselfish plays, like, it's going to come back to you. Like, I just say, I have enough confidence in how things work that, he's not going to regret not passing, he's not going to have to spend the rest of his summer regretting not shooting that versus passing it to, a teammate and a good friend. And a line mate. And what's interesting, and Steve Wadhams, who's a good friend, local guy in Wadhams Trucking, Steve is, but he was the one that I hadn't had a chance yet by the time we were on the bus to come back to Geneva to rewatch any of it.
Oh, wow.
There's just so much going on. And Steve picked it up, and he said, it was interesting that, it was Beloff that was pressuring the defenseman that ended up trying to make that bank pass that, erred and came out to Khalil.
Right.
And, and I think that's a little bit of how it works, the karma.
It comes back,
It came back to him, and I thought that was perfect because, Fonzie tried to make an unselfish play to set up Iggy. Iggy, does a hard work play, and it comes back to give Fonzie the second chance. And, he's a heart and soul. He's a great playoff player. All three championships, Fonzie's been lights out.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that's under there. I mean, we got, Luke, and you got Iasenza and Duclair, and, Tanner Daniels was ripping up, and Scheller. You got some guys that can really shine out there.
Yep.
And to have Fonzie, score that type of goal, in midair, just getting it around him. Yeah. I just thought it was awesome. And you see his face you just see his face when he's holding that championship.
Yeah.
That was the face he had when he looked me in the eye and he said, I'm going to score next time.
Yeah.
And so the backstory, that's awesome.
It's got to be one of the most vindicating feelings for a player ever. Just when you come to the bench and you're just like, nothing is going to stop me from putting a puck in the back of that net.
Yeah,
and then he does it.
You know what? It's to me, it's we gained a lot of stripes right there with that goal in the sense that Iggy and Fonzie. I mean, Iggy was an All-American the year before. He is the goals and the points that he had, and then he loses his two line mates, and Albertus Magnus, he didn't play well. I scratched. I don't like using the word scratch, but I didn't play him the next night, and he came up to me. He's like, Coach, just don't lose confidence in me. And I'm like, Iggy, sometimes you need to hit bottom to get back going.
Right.
And he did, and he never once deviated from being a great team guy.
Right.
He was always a guy on the bench saying the right things and all that. Not that he's a talking leader. He's not.
Yeah.
He's a guy that goes out there, works hard, and does by example. But even Fonzie was snake bit, started hot early in the year.
Right.
And we really didn't have a line going that had fit with those guys. Fonzie had moved around the lineup a little bit.
Yeah.
And then finally in the towards the end, it was Iggy, Iasenza, and Fonzie, and those guys are juniors and seniors, and they had never played together before.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of a new line at the end, and I think the nice part was, to me, those guys emulated staying the course. It's about the team, making it work, and I'm glad they got it.
Yeah.
Because that message is very helpful to other guys that are digging.
Yep.
To keep digging.
Yep.
So
yeah, 100%. Just because you get scratched with however many weeks left in the regular season doesn't mean that by, national semifinal, you're the one that doesn't get credit for deflecting the shot that Callum Chow takes to get the first goal of the day, which
Right.
I'm a firm believer that was Iggy's goal.
And guys that, maybe they're, I've had a lot of guys. To me, it comes right down to is somebody giving you your best.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sometimes, guys are giving their best and it's just not happened for them.
Right.
I know what that's like on the golf course.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's fair.
So I've had a lot of balls from that
Oh.
cup. You just got to keep putting.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, you just keep swinging, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
we'll talk about two guys as we wrap things up here that definitely have been giving their best for 3 years, I'd
Yeah.
say, and they're going to do it for one more after this.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem saying probably the best goalie tandem in college hockey, period, just when it comes to having two guys that really could, fill for each other and not miss a beat in that way. It's very much Boston-y feeling,
Yeah.
very Olmark and Swayman-esque, just the energy that, of course, Maverick Goyer and Damon Beaver being together, coming here together, playing those split regular seasons. First, I want to ask just about Damon in general. Just what is it that makes someone so absolutely dialed in as a person that they can have a skate just literally cut their hand open and not even notice it until they are actively bleeding on the ice? And then not even to think whether or not he's going to come back into that game. He said, just give me some tape and let's get back to it. But just what is the mind of Damon Beaver?
I think he's just, you've interviewed him, so he's pretty humble.
Yeah.
He's pretty locked in. He's very confident. And I think that's his best attributes. I mean, he's working on his craft even when sometimes he doesn't look like he's working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's his best attributes. And I think it's the best attribute of any good goalie is, how tough they are between the ears and how tough they are right here in the chest, and in the gut.
Yeah,
you gotta have the nerve.
Yep.
And but I think that the nerve is what's in your heart too, in terms of your confidence and your belief in yourself and your teammates in the process. He has that, and I'll be honest, hats off to him this year. I mean, towards the end of the year, it wasn't easy sailing for him.
Right.
Some goals were going in that aren't Damon Beaver goals against,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't. He wasn't in perfect form, going in.
Right.
But certainly did it.
Found
so,
it. Yeah.
I think that's what I like about the year is like there was some adversity for him. To handle his game and be ready and step to the plate and do it, and he did.
Yeah.
And it was the toughest goaltending decision I've ever had.
Yeah.
Both, I could have played both of them.
Right. I mean,
I really could have.
Yeah, you probably could have cycled. It just would have sent somebody through a ringer for not stacking up games on games, right?
And sometimes you got to play with the mojo a little bit. Damon's been there, and it was tough.
Yeah.
Because Mav's the top goalie in the country statistically. I mean, they're both, sick numbers.
Yeah.
And they both played a lot of the same games, so, and I thought Mav was playing at that level. So, that's more about Coach Taylor making that decision than it is about who's the goalie.
Right.
And for me, it's like, how do I not go with Damon at that point?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm the chicken not being able to make the other call, but going into this year and Mavs, it was great this year for him because I think he proved what I felt when I recruited him. Mm-hmm. In the previous years, who played Friday, who played Saturday, there was a little bit difference, in the opponents that maybe Beavs had and then that Mavs had.
Gotcha.
So there wasn't that opportunity for Maverick really to get some of that credibility.
Right.
And this year was different, so where we played Norwich on Friday night, we played Norwich on Saturday night.
Yep.
And so that's why, I did have those two goalies. They did put up those numbers against the same teams.
Yep.
And but we see it in all sports. You see it in, pro sports. There's a certain guy that comes in as a closer, and there's a reason why.
Yeah. 956 was Mav's ending. 952 was Damon's ending.
Yeah.
1 and 2 in the entire country in save percentage. Soderwall was 3. But I mean, so that's kind of my last thing to ask you about is Mav just mentally being that guy. Just, I mean, how is it for a backup goalie when you get those kinds of games, but then you're gonna have to just lift the trophy after the game kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think I don't think. I mean, he's not a backup goalie.
Right.
Like I don't.
No.
He doesn't. I don't think he thinks that way. I don't think that way. It's one guy can play.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be the good guy or the bad guy making
Right.
making that decision.
Yep.
So I don't think he looks at it that way. As a coach had to make a decision. What's best, what he thinks is best for the team. I'm with.
Right.
I know he's going to play after college. I know coming back, he's going to want his time.
Yep.
And that's awesome. I like that. Beavs is going to know that. Sometimes I look at guys that I played with, my best friend, anything that I achieved, I can look back to, guys, teammates, guys that I competed with for ice time, that friendly competition, wasn't always friendly.
Right.
You're locking horns, but, the guys with you also make you.
Yeah.
If Mavs is putting up a shutout, Beavs wants to put up a shutout. So I think that, and I've seen it in other places. Harvard won their first national championship. They had 2 goalies that they just flip-flopped.
Yep.
I mean, Maine when they had Garsnow and Dunham, so you don't have that a real lot because usually one guy surfaces ahead of the other guy.
Right.
Or the other guy can't stay up with that one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the credit to those 2 guys is they can stay right there with each other.
Yep.
And that's not always easy to do.
Yeah.
So we're certainly in a great spot that way.
Yeah, 100%. Iron sharpening iron right there.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us, Coach. Thanks so much for stopping by and sitting down. And from us here at Against the Boards, thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, and thanks to Coach for stopping by. I've been Chamberlain Bauder. We'll see you next week.
Thanks again.